Welcome everybody to MentorTime. This is the time. If you don't want to be on video, you can stop your video now, take your name out if you don't want that recorded. Zoom doesn't put that in anymore generally. I want to remind people of this topic and why we're doing it right now. We're talking about refocusing career development in the era of generative AI. And I'm trying to not shortcut AI by just saying and reminding everybody what's changed since a year and a half ago that we started seeing ChatGPT by invite. But we are doing this because we've been dancing around the topic, especially in the last work trends we had in March, and then the topic of skills-based organizations, skills-based hiring. And so it's time for us to approach it as something in our professional development. But first, a poll. Now, if you don't want to do Slido, you can put it in the chat. I just want you to think about how much have you used this? A lot, a little? Here's what I've done. If you want to write more in the chat, that's great too. I just want to get our brains thinking around what have I actually done? How would I categorize this into what I call your career workflow? That's up to you to define whether it's job searching, a promotion, changing your career, or whether your company doesn't allow it to be used. That's fine too. You tell me, you judge yourself. All right. Hiram, a lot. Yes, I remember you mentioned that a couple times, both in the course when you took the course work that you did, as well as last week you were talking about that in the CV session. All right. Oh, I guess I should answer too. All right. We are getting some answers here. And I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the results. If you put things in here, I clicked some. I don't know suddenly why it's not answering anything. I've submitted it. All right, Slido, it worked earlier. Let's see. Can you just give me a 1 in the chat box if you put something in Slido? You don't have to tell me what it was, but. Ron, you did. Okay, great. So we're not seeing it. All right. And Peter, thank you. Here's what I want you to realize is there is a workflow and there is a place for it in your career. And I want to make sure that we can talk about that. Thank you, Stephanie, for some. That's great. Oh, here's the poll. Sorry about that. All right, so we're a lot at some, and Hiram was at a lot. So we know we've had some experience with it, and I'm not surprised from several months ago when we talked about this before 2023 ended. Here's what our 3 topic areas look like today: generative AI and jobs generally, how to actively develop and direct your career, and we always leave with what should you do. It was very interesting going to the literature and deciding how far back I was going to look at sources, because one source was from several months ago, and I feel like it's changed so much even in several months. I was trying to be careful. This is a report on adapting to tomorrow's workforce. This is something we've begun to see, but now we're seeing it captured in terms of what employees can get from it, employee benefits, real-time skills data, qualification information, personalized learning content. That's just scratching the surface, as you'll see. There was an interesting HBR article, this was from a few months ago, that said of the desired skills, 68% of companies, so 2/3 of companies want you to have technological literacy. Now, it defined it as data work, cloud work, and networking fundamentals. Networking, electronic stuff, not networking we do in our keeping our networks alive. But they specifically called those out. And I think it shows that even since a few months ago, things have changed in terms of what I would have expected Harvard to be writing about. Harvard gave us some data that I wanted to show you. Technology is likely to be adopted in the next 5 years. Here's why I put the yellow where I put the yellow. When this said of the organizations surveyed who want to adopt technology, I looked at these things, and all of them before the first yellow are things they should already be doing or are already doing, I'm sure. Maybe all of these are, we want to expand our digital platforms and apps. We want to expand our workforce development technologies. I was really surprised. To me, these look, I don't know what the survey question said, but I would have rewritten the survey question differently. Here's why I put the yellow. First one is on artificial intelligence. That makes sense. That's coming more and more as companies adopt it officially, as governments, our own US government, for example, for those of us in the US, what and how is the US government going to be able to use it in different agencies? The three that I highlighted at the bottom for me have the most impact right now and going forward. Text, image, and voice processing. This isn't just not having to use Photoshop anymore. This is the way in which these aspects of what we do, text, images, and voice, are used to create both good and bad things. So deep fakes. How and in what way is all of this processing going to have guardrails around it to make sure that it's used appropriately? We already know it's being abused in making deep fakes, in taking one person's face and putting words that they never said based on their word patterns in other sources. Augmented and virtual reality, we've had this around for a couple decades, and it's still pretty clunky, but it's coming along, and it will give us more work-based ways to increase our skills and experience in, especially in areas where we need to be careful when we put work in practice, flying a plane, putting out a fire, operating on someone for surgery. And I also highlighted power storage and generation because one of the things we know about AI, generative meaning it's going on, it keeps learning, is the same thing we found in Bitcoin. It is electricity intensive, it is power intensive. And we're already running up against those topics as discussions about generative AI and whether our electricity grids can handle them. What's going to happen on a more global scale with countries that already have very fragile grids and can't keep up with the demands of regular things like just people using the internet all day long. They also had this, it was a very long table, so I split it in two, and I decided to start with the most displaced jobs. Now, many of the jobs are those things that are repetitive, that take out the drudgery I talked about, data entry, accounting, things that are repetitive, writing the same marketing materials over and over. Legislators and officials, they didn't explain this, so I can't figure out, are we going to replace legislators with AI, or is this in maybe like law practice, constructing how a bill is written, what gets put in it, tracking bills, things like that. And I was surprised to see home appliance installers and repairers so high on the displacement, because there is a lot of firmware and electronics in everything that we buy now as small appliances and big appliances and our cars, but it still takes a human to repair them. Yes, there are robotics that can repair cars, but when you have a refrigerator and something's got to come in your home, either a robot or a person, to repair your refrigerator because you can't take it to the repair shop. Anyway, it didn't make sense to me, but I highlighted those for that reason. The rest are pretty standard things that we've already been talking about. And the most created jobs, again, all of these jobs that are on the most created list are already there. Maybe more companies are going to be incorporating them, except for the last one, digital transformation specialist. I would argue that's not yet a job that most people would understand. But what we see and what we know is this will be a change agent, likely. It will be probably a group of job cadres, including AI ethicists, which we have seen when we talked about AI a few months ago. We've seen AI, like AI standards, standard operating procedures in companies. We talked about that before also. HBR went on to talk about, it was HBR, no, this is, yes, about the top skills companies are looking for now. On the left is the skill, on the right are the reasons, and they're all around increasing security, increasing efficiencies, increasing quality. Cloud computing, security, and more efficiencies in costs. AI and big data, how and in what way you can apply AI to solve big problems or to make apps for helping solve problems. And cybersecurity, we talked about that related to the voice, image, and text processing. Now we get into more of the user side. The user experience is going to be very important because we know how, even today, I was using an app and a website for the same app, and the user experience of logging in is terrible. And it's not only terrible, it's also very light gray font. And if you have old aging eyes like me, it's harder to read. Here we get into the power issue, the electricity issue, environmental knowledge and stewardship. Because when I first looked at this, I thought, oh, environmental stuff, climate change, but it's all around the idea of consuming and using resources that are fragile infrastructures, but also put some groups at a disadvantage. So are we creating more inequities? Marketing and media skills, these have been leading discussions. We remember in the US from the writers' strike last year, they were arguing for 5 months that they would not agree to anything where AI could be used after one experience with an actor's role, for example. And I'm thrilled to see they call it linguism, multi-language, multicultural here, acknowledging that right now, as far as I can tell, every company is global. That pervades everything we do. And those of you on this call, all of you have global development skills, have language skills, have a facility of working in different environments that put you on the cutting edge for much of what AI will also bring. This interesting article on writer.com, a blogging site, had 2 important points in the middle of their summary of the article that I took some things from. It can revolutionize, let me start again. AI can revolutionize the workplace, getting to employees being more creative, more innovations. But it also opens, and this is my interpretation, opens the floodgates for those employees who will be proactive in seeking new skills and experience and being forward thinking in managing their careers. So they quoted a statistic from an Accenture report that 94, almost 100% of employees are confident they can effectively adopt AI. You all have told me what you're already doing. You're already adopting it. And I'm sure that seeps into the actual work you do, as well as work you do outside of work. That was a lot of works in there. Executives, on the other hand, barely 1/3 of them believe that they can adopt AI at this point because of they're calling it talent scarcity and skills gaps, which tells me that they're not forward. This is, again, my interpretation, tells me they're not forward thinking about, they're already embracing the challenges while it's still new. But again, I don't know what these are the same companies probably who want you to come back to the office. So I want you to start thinking of yourself not as a creator, but that you can be a creative, which in the past we've defined as people who do artwork, who create beautiful graphic designs, artists, architects, whatever. But that you are a creator and an innovator of your own professional career, your life, but also of the work you do. And we go beyond tasks and even production, which I'm going to have to do a lot of work thinking about evidence-based results and how this will reframe. As I was working on this weekend, I thought, oh, a good thing I'm doing a course revamp this summer. There was a report from LinkedIn that it's seeing almost 100%, 75% each increase each month in seeing more AI terms in people's profiles. Now, there's a billion users on there, so they don't say how many percent of their users are doing this. I have not seen, and I'm connected with a fair number of people. I see more and more profiles every day when people connect with me. I haven't seen those among the non-technology based jobs folks that I work with, but it's out there and it's one of the things we'll be talking about. So again, people are talking, this is another article that talks about the expanding opportunities for you to have growth as you look at, they talk about where you excel as creativity, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking. I think it goes beyond that. I thought this was a really important point, one I hadn't thought about, and it makes so much sense reading about it. You can keep up with the state of the art, and I would say you can pull yourself ahead of the state of the art or at the leading edge, bleeding edge, you choose your term. Network with AI practitioners and going to industry conferences, your industry, not technology conferences, where you can talk to people. For example, there was a woman several months ago who did it was a year ago, who did a lot of 3 workshops on using AI in doing research activities and all the work that she was able as a consultant to push out to AI in different ways. This is how you can take control and understand what your emerging role will be. Remember, I described your opportunity is to make an emerging role for yourself. Use the people who are doing it, thinking about it, and figuring it out how you can get to be part of that, or maybe you're already leading part of that. Finally, as we get going, this is, again, reminds you there are ways for more customized learning. Hopefully we'll see something beyond synchronous and asynchronous webinars. We'll see maybe work tailored to, learning and development tailored to people who want to sit down and read books, people who like to watch things in real and put things into practice, people who want to be led by a classroom instructor or a Zoom instructor, or a combination of those. So I've made a lot of comments today about you're going to be in charge of you. So how are you going to do it? We'll go through with this framework, reorienting you and then defining your emerging role. And I'll give you some ideas that I had. When you look at this, the gray for me is the part that you use AI to incorporate. In this case, for you reorienting yourself is what work needs me, Peter, me, Stephanie, me, Hiram, me, Ron, me, Sue. What do I need to be doing versus what can I push out to AI? Kind of the question you ask as a manager, what can I delegate and how do I give the delegatee the instructions they need? And then you have to brainstorm the direction of what's left once you remove the routine. And AI then probably can answer this question or help you answer, what can AI assist me with? And I would say, how and in what way do you refine it, define that piece for yourself? And as you define your emerging role now, here's where AI comes in for you with research and define. You will start showing your process workflow. How do you use AI to do your work or specific kinds of work, data entry versus data analyses, for example? What in your role changes that you then amplify in that workflow process after you use AI? And you will also then define a learning path for your emerging role needs. All of us on this call, watching this video later, are lifelong learners. You wouldn't be watching and learning from this if you weren't. And this is your chance to be even more definitive about it and make sure people understand what you do. So what should you do? I decided that I would not be able to take the time to present 8 different scenarios, which of course you can imagine I would love to do for each of you, for all of you. But we're going to take job change because this is also applicable for job promotion, and it's also applicable for job pivots to a certain extent. I took a job posting that came to me a week ago. This is for a public health advisor at Emory University. The topic isn't so important. Remember, we're talking about AI. What can AI help with, and what can you do? And if you notice in the job posting on the right-hand page, I forgot to count them. I think I counted them yesterday. There's 31 or 29 bullets. Anyway, it's an extraordinarily horrible number. It's not even categorized into 3 or 4 task areas, which some are doing. So I turned to Perplexity, which is another tool someone put me on alert to a couple weeks ago. Perplexity to look at, and I had to analyze this and get the top 15 skills needed. So this is what Perplexity said those long list of bullets is. You've been with me, many of you, on other topics where I have lists and then I reorganize them. So this is how I looked at them in terms of what can you push to AI. The bright yellow, it's very clear. These are where jobs are also being talked about as amenable to AI. Data analysis and monitoring, technical writing, reporting skills. All of these things have been mentioned in the past. M&E, a lot of that's going to go into AI. It probably already is to a fair amount. Grant proposal development will take a lot of the drudge out of it, although it depends how much the funders want to see it. And in the middle, the light orangish yellow is more for, we still need people to do training, but getting the training materials, getting the learning and capacity building activities, stakeholder engagement and communications, there's a certain amount that could be automated there. Now, I took the bottom 5 things out because they're either too specific, such as fluency in French. You could certainly use Google Translate for writing documents, but you can't. I guess you could hold it up each time you were working in French, but I don't think they'd hire you for that. I took those out and looked at the things that are at the bottom. The things at the bottom still require you. That's the me part of what are you going to keep in your job. It is not to say that there isn't an AI component to each of these things. There are some automated things we can do in program management, strategic planning, budgeting and tracking, and to a certain extent, supervision. So when we look at the job posting, here's the first AI task you can do. What does AI help you with? And I gave you the analysis and showed you what I thought. What are you already doing of these things that you can now say, I am more efficient because since I can use X tool for Y results, or X tool plus X tool for 3 different things, then you can say what you're already experienced in. And then you detail the skills that you need to continue or the learning you need to continue to get. That's in terms of what the job posting wants. And then your resume and CV, if you haven't already started thinking about where and how you will incorporate talking about AI in present work situations or learning situations where you're bringing your learning experiences will bring you some actual evidence-based results, which we'll be talking about. I think it's in June. We're going to talk about that next. You can look at what the rest of the job posting needs are and how and in what way you can explain in the modern world how hiring you brings you more efficiency. And then, as many of you have already done, I'm sure, I know many people I talk to now use AI to compare your resume, and I would say your long CV, because you need to keep this on your long CV so you don't lose track of your history, but compare you to the job posting and see how it comes out. Now, the caveat is that job posting doesn't mention AI efficiencies or anything ahead of time. But look at all the assets where you can continue to get help from AI. You could have AI help you draft a cover letter that explains those efficiencies, those results from incorporating AI and what you've been able to do. Simple things that we recommend all the time, and someone asked about at one point last week, drafting a thank you message after an interview or even whatever feedback you get, drafting what we call a rejection message. They rejected you, but you can emphasize how much you want to be connected to them, and all the prep for an interview. One of the things that AI does right now that seems to be pretty good, and again, I'm not in job seeking, I'm just when I did this, I was trying to reflect all of you in terms of being able to give a URL to an AI, ChatGPT or Copilot, have that basically digest a company's entire website and anything found on search around X topic, and just think how much prep work you've done on the company, the culture, what it seems to be. Now, granted, you're going to get this text and you're going to compare it to what your BS meter and everything else. You want to make sure it's accurate, but it helps. Instead of going through screen after screen of the company board is this and the team is that and the projects are here, and obviously defining interview questions. So that's a quick view of how you can move forward in AI, acknowledging how you've begun already to use it in your workflow. So either in the chat box or in Slido, if you could write just a few words or a phrase about what you've added into your workflow, what's a standard process for you, whether you're job seeking, whether you're in a job, and let me know if your company doesn't allow it or if there are reasons that some of your work couldn't be put into an AI that's learning from confidential information. We know we have to be careful about that. And I will not answer this one because I should. I've incorporated some of it. All right. All right. Used AI to summarize topics and then use the output. That's great. Because even if it's not in the workforce, it's still affecting and helping you do the work. For job seeking, top skills from JD, write and improve a cover letter. Great. Good. I'm glad to know. I know all of you have done some of it. I suspect some of you have been in jobs where you're not using or not eligible to use it for your official work. So I know that can be difficult. Job hunting, brainstorming, and generating images for posts or presentations. Yes, I used all my stock photo sites yesterday looking for a person at a computer using generative AI, and I was envisioning like a robot or whatever. And I went to image art, I tried to get to DALL-E and got to image art first and generated the photo that was on the second screen, the pink section of a person typing with what looks like robot stuff around her. Anyway, yeah, I was out of choices, so I went to AI for that. Okay, thanks everybody. I do have an empty slide there. I forgot to take out. Okay, references. Lots of references. I'll send them out when I send out the recording. And I'll stop there and ask Ron for his comments.
Yeah, it's interesting what you've presented, Sue. One, I'm just going to comment about one of the energy hogs that you didn't talk about as an energy hog, but you talked about. And I think that because cloud computing is becoming the norm, with all of the storage requirements and processing, et cetera, it's all in the cloud. And so that on its own, just because of its demands, I suspect is going to be adding to the overall bill for electrical. And it's probably something we're not really thinking about because we tend to think of the other elements to it. But it just occurred to me while you were doing that presentation, that's got to be there. The other thing that occurred is it's interesting. I remember doing a study some time ago looking at how we define the man machine, the trade off between man and machine, which one gets to do the work. And it comes down and see today that discussion is very different than it was, say, 30, 40 years ago, where deciding what the human being was better at than the machine. And even then, they weren't necessarily very good at it because they tended to ignore some of the things that the machine could do better. So I suspect in some ways, when you were talking about the executives, for example, they don't get the idea that on one hand, they're saying they're expecting all these things from their employees and being able to use AI for certain things. It's the same soft skills they're using, the same transferable skills that they're using. And so they would benefit, I suspect, from doing that. So, anyway, we've talked about, well, for years, we've talked about the challenges that upper level executives have in getting it and being tending to be the resistors when it comes to change. So that I'm not anticipating that will change anytime soon. It will be a lagging indicator, I think, when the executive suite has embracing AI, we'll be on to something else. But no, that's what I have to say. I think this is really interesting and it will continue to evolve. I guess that's what we have to say, because that choice between how good the machine is at doing what looks like a human task and then seeing it not as a threat but as a support, I think that's going to be that's the big issue from what I can see. And right now, for me, it's there as a support. I don't think it's going to take jobs away, yes, but it's going to create jobs. And so the question is, which side of that equation do you plan on being? And that's basically it.
Great, thanks. Other comments, questions, thoughts? I know that we have people on here who've been very active with it, so happy to have you unmute and tell us about your experience or what you think's working well in describing yourself as an AI user in your career path.
So Sue, I had two questions. One going back to the careers that AI is replacing and what skills and careers are going to flourish or stay the same. AI is just rolling out with us, and I'm getting more and more of a sense of what perhaps jobs may be replaced, and it's showing up in ways that I would not have initially guessed because of the degree that you had to have to even be in the workplace. And one of them is in the library sciences, to where AI can do, when we would do a lit review or we would do research, that now AI is being able to do that. So the conversation will be, we're going to do a lit review and also have AI do a search too. And it's coming up in places that I would not have necessarily thought of in terms of being replaced. And I wasn't sure with the accounting, because we all have accountants that do, taxes and things like that. I'm still having a hard time distinguishing between the accounting that they say AI is going to replace and how that's different from the professionals that we see in so many accounting firms. And then the third thing is for Peter and Hira and myself, where in the resume do you suggest that we start putting AI? Do we incorporate it in where it is, or should we have a separate section? But thank you for bringing that up, because I had not even thought about incorporating AI into the resume. Over.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. First of all, I'm glad to know that Stephanie's at CDC, so you're beginning to see it at work. I know the agencies have been having discussions about how much you can bring these alternate technologies in. The example you gave of the lit review, what it sounds to me like right now, and I don't know that CDC is unique to this, is they're saying we still want a human to do it, but we're going to also try out technology and make sure we need to have some way to see how good it is before we give up paying a human to do it. But it's a very interesting philosophy going with that hand in hand, which is the way we often adopt new technologies. When the car came along, horses were still there to drag carriages. In terms of your second question, or your first question was on accounting, remember that these jobs don't get replaced, but it's the drudge skills, the repetitive skills, the mind numbing, number crunching skills. So we've known for over a decade that there's been some version of AI automation, or maybe you don't know, but in the in the US Internal Revenue Service, looking at our tax forms, we get pretty immediate answers about things or get refunds because of the automated system. It's not a person looking at it saying, let's flag Sue's account because she lives overseas, which happened to us once. So it's the critical thinking part of all of us. Say, I'm the accountant. You need me to look at, does this make sense for this size company? I'm seeing on a graph that midterm companies have extraordinary expenses. There must be an error there because normally we'd see 30% or something. So I think that I know it's not an all or nothing bucket. It is what's the drudge, the repetitive. And then it's really good that you're asking specifically, because I didn't want to get in this detail and weigh us down, because it will take us a while to do it. But where do you put it in your CV and resume? Under your job right now, where you're using it, where you're starting to use it, begin to express producing literature reviews on X and Y studies using both a consultant and AI, both to produce the results and to compare the validity of the machine learning model or something like that. And I'm happy to help if you all have words, if you all have parts of your present job or present work you're doing in any fashion that you want help with, you can just email me with either the paragraph or send me your whole CV, resume, whatever marked, and I'll give you words and ideas about how you can incorporate that. Because I want you to get used to starting to talk about it and not ignoring it in a job interview, not ignoring it in a promotion discussion. And I don't know, this will be so interesting, Stephanie, when I think about what I've worked with you on for 10 years, plus on your CV for your promotions and your job changes at CDC. CDC has an incredibly detailed, very specific format, and you have to mention every single task you do. And we're asking now us all to be talking at a higher level of creativity and innovation. So does that help you? Do you have more questions on that, or anybody want to add anything?
Yes, that's helpful as we get started transitioning into using AI.
Ron, yes, of course.
Yeah, no, I was thinking actually about the accountant one, and it's funny, I stopped using an accountant because the software that you get for tax software is so smart. And this is pre-AI. It's just algorithm based. And so AI is just an extremely sophisticated algorithm that it also learns from its own behavior. But it's interesting because I think that's what's going to happen. Not so much that it's not about the AI replacing the accountant. It's just that the accountant can do so much more. You don't need as many. And so therefore, an accountant's office that might have had 5 accountants at tax time, you have an accountant where 1 or 2 with some kind of a support system can now accomplish the same or more and process that. And I think that's the example you gave, Sue, about how the government offices are now incorporating all sorts of things in order to reduce the workforce and trust. Hopefully, it's going to improve or make the presentations or our interaction with them more effective and more efficient.
I think the key changes as students are in college and graduate school, what they're choosing to do based on what you just said, Ron. And then they're saying, I'm hearing it on the radio here, radiology is another one
Oh, yeah.
area it's going to be interesting to see how many radiologists are even trained in the next 10 years through medical school. So
Radiology and pathology, both. And they've already got a fair amount that's being done in automated fashion already.
Yeah, I think in some of that, they're doing it really as a trial where they have the human there. Like I know for example, mammograms, they used to be two people would be involved. They're now saying that the AI support could be the other person. They still need the one person because the AI on its own does not get it right enough of the time. And so I think that's going to carry on for a while until the AI gets really smart. And then there will always going to be a need for some kind of an overseer.
Right. Other comments or thoughts?
You got Peter's hands up.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as you were talking, and I was wondering, is there any sector or parts or something that kind of would shut that you would not want to advertise your AI usage to? So Stephanie's saying CDC starting to use it, and I didn't know that. So I was wondering if, as I apply to USAID jobs or CDC jobs, is government less likely to be accepting of that, or are they more likely to be more restrictive, maybe I should say? When I think about my job with in the Caribbean, I would not have told them ever that I used AI, even though I did, because I would expect them to be upset about it and say, no, you can't do that, even though they didn't have a official policy about it. But is there anything like that that you would suggest to watch out for?
I would suggest that before it's not an all or nothing. Go and see what's out there in terms of what the agencies are saying they're doing. They may not be advertising it a lot, but I thought about this yesterday as I was putting this together and thinking through, am I going to tell you to put it in your resume or not? I am, of course, but how? I think we, the users that are going to be hired, need to be pushing the envelope to say, this is what I bring. And think about it. If you're as old as me, or even 15 or 20 years younger than me, they're still pretty old. If you can show you're using AI, guess what? I hope ageism starts to decrease, but also you want them to know because other people are using it, whether or not they say it in their job applications. To me, it feels like it gives you an edge, but it's going to take some rehearsal for all of us to write about it, to talk about it, to be able to come up with compelling examples, which isn't just, oh, I had to do a lit review and it found all these things here. There are always going to be naysayers. We're going to be aiming, even though the jobs don't ask for experience with AI. I'm hoping I'll start to see some job descriptions, job posting bullets and listings that start to not talk about AI, but don't talk about M&E and these big frameworks, but rather needing an advisor to take M&E generated output, AI generated output, for example. That's what I'm hoping I'll start to see soon. So does that help you, Peter, think about it? I think be on the bleeding edge or the leading edge or be on the early adopter stuff.
Yeah, that helps a little bit. I guess I was just worried about specifically like government jobs. Is the
Yeah,
government saying you can't use it? But I think I remember a little bit ago seeing a USAID AI tool for their grant
perfect.
applications.
Yeah.
And so it's being used, it's being adopted. So I was just wondering if there was like, I don't want to say fear, still that skepticism of hiring managers saying, if they're using AI, are they using their brain at all?
Yeah, I
But
think you
that's
just have
probably
to
not the
feel it.
case if you sell it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Sell it. Figure out how you want to sell it. I love that you
Yeah.
know that there was an USAID AI tool. I think we've seen a huge leap since about a year ago when we were starting to get a proliferation and more access. When we knew that, what was the second one that came along? It was DALL-E for images, Chat GPT, and then whichever was the second one. Oh, I think it was the Google one that's been renamed, but it doesn't matter. As those came along, you know that there were people in the government needing to do more with less money, wanting to do things faster. And people are naturally curious. And the younger ones that are getting out of school now, I'm sure that they spent a lot of time talking about this and using it for group projects and stuff. I hope they did. Hope they didn't have to do so much. Yes, Ron. And then we've got to close down. We're keeping you all
Yeah.
overtime with this discussion.
It's interesting. I'm interested in Peter's question because my initial reaction is saying that can't be true. But then everything you said, Peter, rings true. Except I know one of the leaders in research in terms of this kind of thing, AI, has been the military. Now, I know we don't generally think of military as government, but they are.
Oh, they are, yeah.
Yeah, they're an arm of the government and so on. And I'm just curious, Sue, maybe you've seen this or are there other agencies in government that are in fact supporting research of this type? In Canada, we have a actual branch of government which is a research agency. And so I would be surprised if they're not, because I know they were certainly looking into to various technologies in the 80s and 90s when I had dealings with them. They certainly were promoting it. And then you eventually see the results showing up elsewhere in government or in private sector and so on. So I guess I'm
Well,
curious from a
yeah,
US point of view if there is such an agency.
beyond the military is all of the work that NIH funds. And for example, that's where the original funding came for the Human Genome Project. That took people way out on the edge. Huge electron microscopes and things were even, anyway, stuff that I worked on an evaluation for epigenomics, and the stuff they were doing there, really parsing things out. Again, I'm sure all of those researchers who are on the cutting edge of solving health problems have been using it for quite a while. And anytime there's a new technology, I think those are the two agencies I know that would be doing it routinely because they have to be on the bleeding edge at NIH. I suspect that there's parts of every government agency that probably have been looking at it. I know a friend of mine used to be a controller at USAID. I'm sure he would have looked at this and said, oh my gosh, this could revolutionize us getting contract review stuff done if we can put it through AI and say, did they meet these X criteria in their grant proposal or whatever. So I think there have been a lot of champions in the government. It's more for the government. They move slowly. And so before they can set out, yes, you can use everything, they're doing like a clinical trial of, oh, we'll start with lit reviews and see if they don't screw those up.
Yeah, and I
They,
think
the AI, not they, the humans.
yeah, and the other element I was thinking also is the space agency
Oh, sure.
does
Yeah.
does work there, but now, of course, in the U.S., around the world now, it's being contracted out to the civilian sector. So some of the more advanced research into trying to make things happen is going to be more in the private sector on that side.
Right.
Certainly, the space agencies used to be the one of the really important creators of innovation.
I will just thank you all for this very fascinating discussion. I will remind those who may be watching it later. We want to refocus not on the agencies where they have a need and a justification for using it all the time, to what can we use as knowledge workers, as people who are interested in making our job go better, but also making the world a better place, if I can get to that large area. And with that, I think we're meeting again next week. I forgot to check. I believe the first 2 weeks in June, we're also meeting because we will be doing work trends. And I will turn it over to Ron to close the meeting. You're on mute.
I can talk into space. I need an AI tool to remind me. Anyway, it did shout at me too. Anyway, yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. It was a good conversation. I guess we went long, which is always a sign of good conversation. So yes, I see on my calendar that we're meeting for the next 2 weeks, and so I look forward to seeing you then.